Hello and welcome back to my Dandelion Diaries. Today we're going to be continuing on with an ink exploration, and this is going to be Season 2 Blue Black inks. I do want to preface this video by saying I'm going to be going through a lot of inks today. I have 20 in the lineup that I want to do, so this is going to be a bit of a longer video. I'm going to do my best to keep my rambling to a minimum, but just feel free to use those timestamps if there's any ink in particular you really want to see, or just go to the final swatch page at the end where I talk about all of the inks. Anyways, as for supplies, I have my Hobonichi A5 notebook here with the original Tomoe River paper, a couple jars of water over here, my acrylic stamp block because I'm going to be doing some smaller swatches, a plastic dropper. I don't even know if there's a technical term for these. I just buy them off of Amazon, honestly. And then my Kakimori Brass Dip pen with the aluminum handle. I will be doing a review on this handle soon. I feel like I've used it long enough to kind of review it a little bit more. And then I have my white t-shirt here that has been dyed several times with ink, just from using it over and over and over again. I do also want to say that I am trying in Season 2 to make sure I have different brands for every color. So this video will have pretty much 19 different brands of blue black ink. I do have one brand that I have 2 inks from, but without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the very first one, which is going to be Faber-Castell's Midnight Blue. Faber-Castell's Midnight Blue is truly a gorgeous blue black color. It has excellent consistency. This is actually one of the Faber-Castell inks I've had for a minute. It was one of the first colors I tried from them. I like it. I like the shading in this one, and it does have a little bit of a sheen to it as well when it dries down. But I feel like there's so many other options that I don't know if I reach for this one as much as I reach for some of the other ones. Next we have KWZ's Warsaw Dreaming. And as I've mentioned before, the KWZ inks do have a scent to them. It's kind of like a vanilla-y sweet smell. All of their inks smell this way. It is just something with the brand. The color of Warsaw Dreaming, though, is very, very dark. This one's almost black to me with a little bit of a blue lean to it, and it does have quite a bit of sheening as well. I'll talk a bit more about the characteristics when it's fully dry, but the consistency of KWZ ink is very nice and very wet. For the next ink, I have Kobe 51, and I believe it's Kanocho Midnight. And this is actually one of the newer inks to me. I've been trying to play around more with the Kobe inks just because I've had a few requests, and also because they just have been really intriguing. The color of this is really quite nice. It's a nice true blue black. I wouldn't say it's too far blue though. It's still more towards the black side. Consistency wise, I find the Kobe inks to be very wet, much like some of the other Sailor inks I have tried. I think that it's a really neat brand. I think they're kind of expensive, honestly, kind of like the Sailor inks, but overall I'm not unhappy with this color. It's a really nice color. Next we have one of my personal favorites, and that is Kaweco's Midnight Blue. And I specifically like this one because it's a bit more blue, honestly. This one may even be considered dark blue versus blue black once it's dried down, but it has some really nice shading. And it comes in cartridges, which I find really nice for the Kaweco pens, especially just because the converters are very, very small. After that, I have Van Diemen's or Van Diemen's Night series, and this is Midnight. And the Midnight by Van Diemen is nice, and I don't know, it almost has like a tealness to it. It does lean a little bit out of the blue range, but it's still really blue-black. This also has some really nice sheen to it as well. Overall, I've been having a lot of fun exploring the Van Diemen inks. I've only had a few in my collection, and I'm trying to add some more for my other color ranges, but this one, it's definitely got a little bit more of an interest to it. Next up, we have one of my personal favorites, and this is Wearingeul's Hamlet. And this ink is a shimmer ink, which I find to be really hard to find a nice blue-black shimmer. I have one by Ferris that I'll show at the end for my first exploration. That's probably my favorite. But this one's a really close one, and then I have one more in this exploration today. But the color of Wearingeul's Hamlet is almost like a smoky blue-black. It has a very nice, I don't know, it has like a smokiness to it, like a muddiness maybe in the background. It's very intriguing. It's dark, not to the black end of blue-black, but it has almost like a blue-gray-black. I don't even know, but the shimmer in this is really nice and really makes it different than any other blue black I think I've ever tried. Next up, we have one of my newer personal favorites, courtesy of Lori, so thank you so much. This is Birmingham Pen Company's Cold Steel. And I honestly love the flow of Birmingham Pen Company inks. I have talked about this in pretty much every video at this point. They are my pretty much favorite brand for the past few months. Ever since I was introduced to them, I have fallen in love. They're like a money sink for me because I just want to buy all of their inks. Anyways, the color of Cold Steel is this beautiful, rich blue-black color, and it has this shading that goes almost all the way to black. I did show this previously when I swatched those inks from Lori, so if you're curious in a bigger swatch, you can go check out that video. But for this one, the flow and the color just make it for me. It's a wonderful, wonderful color. Next, we have DeAtramentis Sherlock Holmes. And the color of Sherlock Holmes is almost like a royal blue-black. It has a really nice, dark, bright blue base, and the shading goes to kind of like a blackish color. I really like this one. Honestly, it's a very unique base color for a blue-black, and I love the consistency of DeAtramentis. It's so interesting that I have like so many favorites in a row that I just did, like Wearingeul's, Birmingham Pen Companies, and then this DeAtramentis, but I'm not kidding. This is like my top 3 probably on the page. But the color of this is really nice and really rich. I kind of did mess up writing it next to the swatch, so you may not be able to read it, but I do have all of these listed in the description if you ever can't read anything with my handwriting on the page. After that, we have Ferris Press Crystal Blue Legacy. And this is another shimmering blue-black ink. And I just am not a fan of this one, honestly. I like a lot of the Ferris Press inks. I am on their Jubilee program, but this one just was not my cup of tea. I think it was just the shimmer and the ink color mixed too well together. Like, you couldn't even tell them apart in some areas. I did try putting this in a pen, and it wasn't my favorite, so I just have what's left of this little sample. The color is nice. It's a good blue-black color, a bit more on the purpley blue-black side, and it does have a sheen as well as the shimmer. It's a very dynamic ink. It's just, it wasn't my particular favorite. Next, we have Monteverde's Zebra. The one thing that I find with this ink in particular for me is it has this ability to bleed, not like bleed through the paper, but maybe feather in the heavier areas. It doesn't really do it in swatching or with like dip pens, but I find that when I put it in a broad nibbed fountain pen, it does feather a little bit, and I'm not sure why. I've mainly only experienced it on the Rhodia paper. I haven't really experienced it on the Tomoe River paper, but that's just something interesting I find with this ink specifically. This is from their, I think it's like Zoo Animals line of inks. I have shown, I think, a few other ones from that line, and it's a really great color. It's a nice blue-black. It's just, I had some issues with feathering on the Rhodia paper, and I don't know if it was user error or not, so I'm just going to put that out there. Next, we have Sailor Ink Studios 940. And I was really torn between showing Sailor's 940 or the true Sailor Blue Black. I decided to go with the Ink Studio just because it's a little bit more dynamic. It has a bit more color to it. The actual color of this is pretty true to blue black. It does shade down really dark to almost a black color, and the base is pretty neutrally blue. I would say it's kind of close to the color of the Faber Castell's Midnight Blue. Maybe even the same kind of colorway of the Kaweco one, but not as light. It does have a bit of a sheen to it, and it's a very nice, wet, flowing ink. I do find that the Sailor brand is a bit pricier just because you get less ink for the dollar price, but it is a really reliable brand. I've never had any issues with Sailor doing anything funky on any kind of paper that I've tried it on. Obviously, besides really like cheap copy paper that just doesn't work well with any kind of fountain pen ink. Next, I have Colorverse number 2, Proxima, I think it's Beta, but Proxima B. And Proxima B is a nice shader. It does have some really nice shading. I find that the Colorverse brand is pretty reliable. I've not tried too many of their inks, but everything I've tried so far has been really fine. Nothing super exciting, nothing super crazy. I will say their shading is phenomenal, though. They have a lot of really good shaders. Only thing with this ink is I find it to be a little bit dry, and I don't have that experience with any other Colorverse ink. So I don't know if it's this ink specifically, this sample specifically, but I find this one to be a little bit dry when I use it. After that, we have a new release. This is Lamy Cliff, and this is just a really nice saturated blue-black ink. I was going to do the traditional Lamy blue-black because that's one that I've had for a really long time, but honestly, I don't really care for that Lamy blue black. It's really unsaturated. It's very washed out looking. The Lamy Cliff, if you want a nice saturated blue-black ink, this is a great choice. It does have a little bit of sheen to it, which I'll get into more once it's dried down, but it is one of their newer inks, so if you want to try it out, I think it's pretty good. I've only had it for a few days since it came out, really, but it's nice. It's a nice color. Next, we have another one of my personal favorites, and this is Robert Oster's Thunderstorm. And this one is a beautiful, beautiful, dark, dark, dark blue-black. This one, it may even be considered black to some, black with a blue lean even. I find it really nice in that it's not super sheeny. I find it very flat. It doesn't have a whole lot of characteristic in that aspect, but the shade of it is very, very lovely. It also has a really nice flow. I don't know, there's just something about this one that I really do enjoy, and I definitely wanted to make sure I included it in this collection, even though it might be considered a little bit more on the black side than the blue-black side. Then we have another Akkerman ink, and I'm going to just put the name of this on the screen. I don't think I could even try with this one, which is sad. It's a pretty long name, but I'm going to just put it on the screen. And this Akkerman ink is kind of a purpley blue-black. It has a bit of a purpleness to it, maybe even a reddy blue color. I like this one. It's not my favorite. I think it has a bit too much sheen for me personally, but it is really nice in color. The name is very unique. I will definitely give it that, and it does come in a Dutch Masters bottle. I made sure to look that one up for this one. It is number 8, if that helps anybody. I find that the Akkerman inks are really reliable, and the bottles are really quite cool. So if you like this color and you like the Akkerman brand, I would say this one's kind of a fun one. Out of all of the blue blacks on the page, I think this one might be the one that sheens the most. But the KWZ might be the one that sheens the most, actually. So I'll hold my tongue on that until we're done. Next up, we have Platinum's Blue Black. And this is definitely the brightest blue black that I will be including today. I will say that the only thing that considers this to be blue black to me is the shading. It does shade down to a very dark blackish color in some places. I find that Platinum does this very well. One of my favorite inks for them is called Citrus Black, and it starts off as this bright yellow and goes pretty much all the way down to black. This one has that feature, but it does have a nice bright blueness to it as well. It's a nice kind of unique blue black in my opinion. It's a very, very nice one to have different kinds of shading in your writing. Next, I have the first Diamine ink I'm including, and this is Diamine's Midnight Hour. And Diamine's Midnight Hour does have a pretty high sheen to it, but the shading on it's also kind of interesting. It almost has a purpleness to this one as well. This is the first Diamine ink I'm including just because I wanted to also include one from the ink vent, which I'm going to do last because it's shimmer, but just know that there's another Diamine one coming after this one. Next up, we have a recommendation from a viewer when I did my original blue blacks, and this is J. Herbin's Bleu de Profondeurs, I believe is how you pronounce it. Please help me if I am incorrect, but this has become probably one of my favorite blue blacks that I've purchased that were recommended from you guys. And the color of this one is beautiful. It's rich, it's blue, it has a little bit of a shading going on, and it does have a little bit of sheen going on as well. It's a really nice color. I like this one quite a lot. One thing I do find with the Herbin inks is that they can be a bit dry, but I don't have that experience with this ink. This ink does really well for what it is. It doesn't have a bit of a dryness to it in anything I've used it in, and honestly I really like this color and I'm happy to have a very small bottle of it. I don't think I'd repurchase just because I have some other ones I'm a little bit more in love with now, but it is a really, really nice one. Next, I have TWSBI's Midnight Blue. And I honestly only have a bottle of this because it came with one of the TWSBI pens that I bought some time ago. It's a nice color. It is kind of like a bluish, reddish, purplish base, like a dark blue, and then it does have a bit of a black shade to blackish sheen. I wouldn't say this one is fully blue black. It's just a really dark, dark blue. I don't know. I wanted to try it out with this one just because I wanted to compare it to the Platinum Blue Black, just because the Platinum Blue Black is a bit more blue with black shading. So we'll see how these two compare next to each other. And lastly, we have that Diamine ink that I was talking about, and this is Nightfall. It is a chameleon ink, and I believe this one was part of the latest ink event, the 2023 purple edition one. And this is another one of those shimmering inks that I was just like, whoa, after swatching it. I still think Hamlet is my favorite shimmer ink on the pages today, but this one probably is a close second. It's really nice. I will say I wanted to put them next to each other, the Diamine Midnight Hour and the Diamine Nightfall, just because I want to see how close they are since they're both from the same brand. But looking at them as wet swatches right now, they are not at all close. So we'll see how this turns out once they have all completed doing their business drying on the page. Okay, I'm gonna let these finish drying all the way down. I'll come back, zoom in, we'll talk more about sheening, shading, and everything else. I do want to say that this was quite a lot of inks, and I would love your feedback on if you think I should do more or less, break them up into like part 1 and 2. I personally enjoy seeing them all together, even if it's a little bit longer of a sitting, but I would love to hear your feedback on that in the comments. Anyways, I'll see you guys in a minute with some dried swatches. Alrighty, I am back. Everything is pretty much dried down. You can kind of see a little bit of what's going on. I'm going to zoom in, we're going to close up and go over a little bit more of what I'm seeing and maybe what the camera's seeing as well. So starting off, we had the Faber Castell's Midnight Blue. It does have a really nice bluish shade to it. The darkest parts aren't really black, but more of like a really, really dark blue. But the sheen is more of like a reddish black, which gives it that kind of blue-black coloring. Really like this one. Honestly, it's a nice ink. I just don't reach for it as often as I used to. Then we had KWZ's Warsaw Dreaming. The whole thing sheened, which I was not expecting. It does have blue to it, I promise, but the whole thing just turned into a black sheen for this swatch. Yeah, that is what it is. It does have a really nice sheen though. If you like high sheening bluish black inks, this is a really good one for that as well. I will say that the scent does go away as the ink dries. I talked about that with the wet swatches. It's really common with this brand, just have a nice sweet vanilla scent when the ink is wet. Then we have Kobe's Kanocho Midnight, and this one's really quite unique. I actually forgot to mention the sheen on it. It is green. It may appear kind of like a reddish color in some areas too, but it is primarily a greenish black sheen. Very, very interesting. And the base color of this one is definitely a very dark blue, almost to complete black in some areas. A really nice, interesting ink. I honestly forgot about the green sheen, and I'm glad to have it on the page. Then we had Kaweco's Midnight Blue, one of my favorites just because of the shading. This one technically may not be totally in the blue-black family. It's the darkest Kaweco blue that I have, and I really like it because it's not quite to black. It's like that little bit before black. Really nice shading, and I like that it comes in cartridges. It does have a very, 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 very minor red sheen. I mean, it's very minuscule. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but I find that the shading on these ones all have that kind of like yellowy green shade in the back, which is really interesting. Then we had Van Diemen's Midnight. This one I like because it has a bit of more of a teal blue-black to it. Not quite so green leaning that it is teal. It's still very blue, but it does have a bit of a greener lean to it. There is no sheen that I can pick up in this swatch, but I have had it sheen before, just a little bit of a black sheen. It's not super strong. Overall, really nice base color for a nice blue-black. Then we had Wearingeul's Hamlet. Let me see if I can get this to where the shimmer will go. There it is. Okay, so it turns chameleon shimmer, I guess. It's like green, gold, and silver. It's like all three. It is so cool. Seriously, one of my favorite shimmering bluish black inks. It does have a bit of a grain blue-black feeling to it, almost like a muddiness, a smokiness. Very, very, very cool. Really like this one. Then we had Birmingham Pen Company's Cold Steel. I've talked about this one before. This one didn't shade as well as my previous swatch, which I'll show after this, but it is definitely a nice solid blue-black color. Really nice shading all the way to black. Very, very well flowing. Obsessed with this brand as of late. Then we had Sherlock Holmes by DeAtramentis. Really like the coloring on this one. It is a nice bright blue-black. It has a very vibrant color to it, but it is very, very dark in writing. You can kind of see it next to like the cold steel here. Like this is very dark in the swatch and very dark in the writing. This is much lighter in the swatch, but very dark in the writing. I find the writing on this to be pretty true to dark bluish black color. It does have a bit of a reddish sheen to it, which I can see in the camera viewfinder, so I know y'all can see that on screen. It is definitely a beautiful color. It doesn't really shade super, super strong, but it does have a little bit of shading to more of a darker color, and that's mainly what shows up. Then we had Ferris Press Crystal Blue Legacy. I included it because it is a blue black and it does have shimmer and it's something different. But again, this one is not my favorite out of everything. The shimmer is dark blue and the ink is dark blue. And then there's kind of like a reddish black sheen with this one. It is a dynamic ink. It's very interesting. I just don't like that the shimmer matches the ink color because it's like you can't even see the shimmer with it when I use it. Like, I don't know, there's just something about it I'm not a huge fan of. And this one's a little bit dry, I'm gonna be honest, which is common with Ferris Press inks, but this one feels really dry. Then we have Monteverde's Zebra. Love the shading in this one. This one is probably a bit more towards the teal side, kind of like the Van Diemen's Midnight, but a little bit more so. I find that the shading on this one is more of like a grayish black color than true black, and the base of this one is pretty much just solid blue, like dark blue. There is no sheen on this one that I've experienced. It's pretty flat, but again, this one does have that feathering thing that I talked about on the Rhodia paper, and again, I don't know if it's just my sample. I don't know, because all the other Monteverde inks I have no problems with, so I don't know if it's just this sample. Then we have Sailor's Ink Studios 940. Such a fun one. Again, I was really tempted to do Sailor Blue Black instead, but I wanted to just make it a little bit more dynamic. And this one definitely has a really nice blue base color. The sheen is kind of like a reddish black color, and it does have a little bit of black shading in this one as well. It's a very dark ink, so it's kind of hard to see all of it happening in a smaller swatch like this. If you were to do like a whole page of this ink, it'd be really cool to see all of the different shading. And then we had Colorverse's Proxima B or Proxima Beta. Nice dark blue black color. I feel like this one has a bit more of a shade to it than most of the others, just because it has a bit of a lightness to it in some areas and a bit more of like a muddiness to it in other areas. It's okay. It's not, again, my favorite Colorverse ink, and this one is a bit dry, again, for the Colorverse that I've tried, but it is a nice color if you like this brand. Then we had the new Lamy Cliff. As I said, there's that little bit of sheen going on. It's kind of like a reddish, blackish color, a little bit of shading. It's a nice ink, and I like how saturated this one is compared to the traditional Lamy Blue Black, which is very washed out. So if you wanted a nice saturated Lamy ink that is a dark bluish black color, this is definitely a really good one. And then we had another one of my favorites, Robert Oster's Thunderstorm. I think I just like this one so much because the shading is like almost within itself. Like it's almost like a black to gray to dark blue, but there's no sheen. It's very flat. Like there's no shininess to it. It almost looks like a cloud on paper. It's just a really good flowing ink. I don't know. There's just something about this that I like so much. It's just, yes, I'm just going to say that. And then we had the Akkerman ink. Again, this one I said sheened a lot, and the whole thing sheened, but if you look at the KWZ, this one is really oily, slick, sheeny, and this one is not. It's more of a matte sheen. It does have a bit of a darkish blue base, which didn't really show up in the swatch. Unfortunately, it does look really black, especially compared to all of its neighbors. But I will say it does have a blue-black to it. It's just a lot of the sheen came through on this round. It also has a purpleness to it. So I'm almost tempted to re-swatch this one in another video so you can see the purpley shading in it, because the purple shading is kind of cool. But overall, it's a really nice consistency, a really good ink, and the bottles, the Dutch Master bottles, are just really, really unique and really cool. Then we had Platinum's Blue Black. Again, the only reason I even consider this to be blue black is because it does shade all the way down to this black color. In writing, it's actually really cool if you have a really large page of this, because it has like a shift from blue to black throughout the writing, and it looks really dynamic. There is no sheen on this one, in the swatch at least. I can't remember if I've ever had it sheen, honestly. I've had the sample for a while, so I can't really say. I don't reach for this one very often. But it is cool that it shades all the way down to black, which I really love about this brand in general, with the ones that they have that label going down to black, like Citrus Black. Then we have Diamine's Midnight Hour. Hello, red sheen. How are you today? This definitely has a nice bright red sheen to it, and the base of this one is very dark blue. I don't know how I feel about this now after testing some of Birmingham Pen Company's blue sheeners, like the Tesla Coil, the Ultramarine, and the, I think it's Voltaic Arc that Lori sent me. I don't know how I feel about this one now, because it's not as exciting, but it's definitely a beautiful red sheening blue ink. Then we had the J. Herbin's Bleu de Profondeurs. Such a stunning blue-black color. Again, I'm so happy to the viewer who suggested this one, and I'm so glad I picked it up, because it is definitely a really nice one. Honestly, if I didn't have this bottle of the Bleu de Profondeurs, I would probably pick up a bottle of the Cold Steel, because they are really close. This one is much more saturated, like royally blue-black, and the Cold Steel is more of like a muted blue-black. I don't know if that even made sense, but yeah, I definitely like both of these. I will use up the J. Herbin's, but I'm probably going to switch over to the Birmingham Pen Company just because I like the flow of their inks so much better. Anyways, moving on. Then we had TWSBI's Midnight Blue. Again, I only included this one because I wanted to compare it to the Blue Black. But after doing this and it's dried down, it's really close to the Diamine's Midnight Hour, which I was not expecting. They're both high red sheening. They're both kind of like a very similar dark blue base color. Really interesting to see that those two are so close together. And lastly, we had Diamine's Nightfall. I half expected these two to be similar, and I was definitely way off. This is definitely a very dynamic blue-based ink. So it has, again, that chameleon shimmer. So it has green on one side, and then, let me see if I can get it to do the other way. It like goes to almost like a bluish color. You might be able to see that. Yeah, okay. You can see the shift through that, like the goldish to like the bluish greenish. And it does have a bit of a red sheen as well. Very, very interesting blue-black ink. I still feel like Hamlet's is superior. I don't know what it is about this one, but the Hamlet just takes it for me. And the Nightfall is beautiful, but the Wearingeul is just so much more. As I mentioned, I'm going to flip back to the previous ink explorations I've done, and I'm going to go ahead and show that Cold Steel one again, just because it is much different in this swatch. So this is this swatch here. And this is what it looked like before. So you can see in the bigger swatch, it definitely has a lot more of that shading than this one does. And then I also almost wanted to include the Tatcha's Hokusai Kawaii in this one, but I figured since I already swatched it here, you would get to see it again. And then before that, this was the blue-black ink exploration I did originally. So we had the Ferris Press Stroke of Midnight, still one of my favorites, and honestly comparing it to Hamlet's is a bit more of like a grayish dark blue, and this one's definitely more of a pure like dark blue color. We had the Diamine Inkvent's Silent Night, which was a really good, nice standard dark blue-black color. DeAtramentis Document Black Blue is a fabulous waterproof blue-black ink. Aurora Blue Black is another really good one. The Roaring Klinger Verdigris is kind of more of a tealy blue-black, and then the Pilot Namiki Blue-Black is really, really dark in this swatch. I had some comments on this, and I don't know if it's just the sample that I have or the whatever I used, but it was much darker than some of the others that have been reported. And the last three here, the Pilot Roshizuku Shinkai, Sailor Manyo Kikyo, I'm in the Sailor Manyo Kakisubara. Don't know if these even considered to be blue-black anymore after I have done this family of blue-blacks, but I did want to show that they were in my original ink exploration. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing all of these really nice dark blue-black inks. I'm excited to continue on into season 2 of the ink explorations. Let me know in the comments what color you want to see next. Do we want to continue my original order of like blue blacks to blues, or do we want to just jump into a random color family for whatever we're feeling right now? But leave that down in the comments. Also, I'd love to hear that feedback about how you feel about having so many inks on one page. Do you like having more the merrier, or do you prefer something a little bit smaller where I do like 6 to 8 or 10 max, whatever? I would love to hear what you have to feel about that as well. Thanks again so much for joining me here today, for having some fun with some inks in my collection, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.